Peace, love, and progress. I'm not even doing the Facebook fam thing no more, just fam. Right to the point. This is basically and essentially called my stumbling block incarceration. Wound up being, watch this here, my stepping stone elevation. My stumbling block incarceration created for me a stepping stone in my education, and guess what? My liberation. And I could rhyme all day long about that one subject, and here's the reason why. What's got me pretty messed up is that a lot, maybe about early this week, a good friend of mine just threw something up on Facebook asking me why I put up a picture of, in one case I'm standing in front of Howard University on Georgia Avenue, and the other case I'm standing, I'm getting a mug shot. And it's the 1980s. I went into the New York State Department of Correctional Services back at the age of 17, just turned 17, January 16th, 1976, and I did not get out until March the 31st, 1997. 21 years straight and some months. Now here's the reason why I'm sharing that with you, because it became an excellent teaching tool. When I posted this picture, a girlfriend of mine, a female friend of mine from Richmond, in the Caribbean community, she just said, she didn't ask in a mean way. She said, what's up with the photo? Meaning, like, what was I thinking about at the time? But a lot of my old friends from Long Island, New York, where I was raised at least from the age of birth all the way up till about maybe 15-ish, 16-ish. Anyway, that's why I got busted at. The gist of it was, they're friends of mine that to this day it amazes me that they even remember me. Greg Flanagan and my God, Dominic Sarabella. Well, there's no way in the world me or Dominic would ever forget each other. But there's just certain guys that I could barely even remember from high school, because when you're incarcerated, you just shut your brain down and you don't want to remember anything about the so-called freed life or anything on the other side of that wall, because you're gonna be there for a minute. Well, in any case, I don't always want these people to look at me in the context of just being some ex-con or something like that, but it was an excellent time for a teaching tool. Man, I've had 3 businesses that have risen and fallen. I've had 4 or 5 youth services programs certified by the state of Virginia and North Carolina and New York, teaching juveniles and deterrence and juvenile delinquent behavior. I've been a youth services counselor. I've even been a drug counselor while I had a marijuana problem, so bet I know. Or if it was a problem at that. But in any case, I'm telling my business in this context because they asked why the photo. Well, it reminds me of where I've been and how far I've come. And it also was an excellent time to give a teaching tool on this subject here. Now today at Howard University, I'm over at Howard University School of Divinity and School of Law, and they're having this today. This piece right here. And what it is, what's posted is From Slavery to Criminal with One Amendment. And it's this new documentary out called The 13th. Now this screening is going to be here at Howard University School of Divinity, and it's going to be here Wednesday, January 11th at 4 o'clock p.m. in the Moot Court Room. And it's no cost. They say no cost, just solidarity. Now, what it does is it documents and shows how the prison industry, we have went from being African Americans that went, well, really a lot of Americans, because white folks were slaves over here before African Americans were, but it was under the form of indentured servitude. Whereas African Americans or Africans that live here in America or abroad and kidnapped and brought here, we have went from chattel, which is just a slick term for saying movable property. We went from movable property and chattel like that, where they made money off of us, to the point of the prison system now. And how is one of the biggest corporations and industries, basically in the world in some respects, especially in what they do specifically. New York State, even when I was in it, I was never in anything but maximum A security prisons, where the walls were like at least like 30 feet high, 25, 30 feet high in some cases. But at the end of the day, my point is that how prisoners become an industry. The stories I have from in there, but while in there, the point is that I wound up getting a GED, then I got my associate's degree, then I got my bachelor's degree, and was 6 credits shy of getting my master's before I left. I taught in a classroom setting in that environment for about 17 years of my bid. I did time in solitary confinement, aka SHU, special housing. Went through a lot of different things. Both intellectually, spiritually, culturally. I've met crazy men that I hope, and this is gonna sound so foul, but never ever get out of that piece. Not because I'm hating on other fellow prisoners or ex-cons, but because some of these cats that have committed some of these crimes are probably, I'm just telling you what I've seen. There's an excellent chance that they're going to do it again. That means from the victimization of women and children on down to kidnapping and murder of whole families and no change or remorse or anything. Incarceration is a joke. The only person that can rehabilitate a person is if they rehabilitate themselves. But now let's get back to this prison thing. First and foremost, even if we come from a biblical perspective, look at this. The first cat who committed the first murder, Cain that slew Abel. Homeboy rushed around and broke out and he was on the run. We look at Moses. Moses was on the run and technically in jail in the context of he was in there for black on black. He was running because of black on black crime. Think about it. Because here goes a Hebrew, a black Hebrew Israelite killing an Egyptian. It ain't nothing but a black person killing a black person from New York killing a black person, say down in Florida. Same soup, just a different bowl. If you really know who the Egyptians or Cometians were. We can go in Joseph, in the Old Testament, Joseph is like, he did time in jail, came out, and as a matter of fact, I'm gonna do something called Just Like Joseph, and how I parallel my life with his, and how he kind of sort of got sold out, and how he got sold out by his brothers, or in the sense that I got sold out, but we'll talk about that some other time. Incarceration, in my experience and my historical background in it, is a teaching tool for me. Malcolm X was in prison. Elijah Muhammad was in prison. Some of the baddest sermons or letters and oratory that Martin Luther King ever gave came from his Birmingham jail experience. He did time, and for different reasons. Well, not for murder, not for this. Well, I got incarcerated for taking the life of a known pedophile right there on Bayshore Road in Deer Park back in the days. That did not justify me taking his life, and we didn't even go there for those intentions. It was a bunch of ignorant, dumb youngins who, just like so many of them I see up here in the Washington, D.C. and South Side area and certain parts of Richmond, Virginia, which is why I identify with them so well, because they got so much indecision in their life, and I can't even use half of the excuses that some of the cats use, because I was from Long Island, Deer Park, New York, and that place there was like definitely back in the 60s through at least early 80s was like straight suburbs, beautiful, excellent schools, teachers, the whole bit. Which is why I did that thing one time on what am I going to do about my white folks? Because I got too many white friends and too many white folks out there that I grew up with, and I've had more black people stab me in the back and twist a knife around and mess over me and whatnot, but I didn't understand true black culture, the development psychologically, sociologically, and politically of the specific ethnic group that I was forced to be in. I didn't come up with the words black. I didn't come up with the words nigger, cracker, white person, black person, all of this ethnic and both verbal, negative, as well as pseudo-scientific descriptions of races and tribes. Ain't no pure tribe on the planet no more. But I am very much the Christian, but unapologetically pro-black, and that means that everything from my taste in women on down to my taste in food, basically and essentially comes out of that region. And so, with that thought in mind, unapologetically, I also say that you can be Afrocentric and at the same time be Christian. And what I'm saying is, wow, in any case, this incarceration thing, had I not done that, I was already headed on the road to, I'd already started experimenting with heroin, which basically and essentially anybody from Deer Park knows, Long Island knows, heroin ruined our neighborhoods, from dirty needles and cats catching AIDS from it on down to transmitting it sexually and whatnot. It was a real bombshell. My brother died from it. But with all these experiences, I get on here, like I told you before, because it's therapy. And even more importantly, therapeutic for me in any case. And I'm not so arrogant as if to believe that I got anything that anybody else would possibly hear. But when I look at the following and folks watching it, well, I guess I'm going to look at the stats first. But at the end of the day, again, this incarceration thing and how it is a sanctioned tool, and one of the biggest cats that's into these privatized jails and prisons today is ironically enough Mr. Michael Jordan. And half of the kids that probably sitting up in some of these prisons was in there for either trying to steal them sneakers, get something with Mike's name on it or whatever, just trying to make money like Mike. And he just made it clear that it ain't his responsibility and he ain't no role model, he about the dollar. So with that thought in mind, to avoid your children going to this place, for giving them a real wake-up call. A lot of you young guys, they need to show some of this stuff to some of these gangs, some of the Bloods and the Crips and the Folks and all these other cats that are committing all these crimes, because I'm getting tired. You can't blame it on white people no more. You can't blame it on the socioeconomic. We can show strains of where it comes from and how it's affected us and developed, but we got too much consciousness. We do it. We're computer literate. We got so much going on. But again, you can't liberate a people nor a person who has no desire to be liberated or free. I was in prison before I went to jail. I was in prison before I went to prison. But just not knowing Jesus, as far as I'm concerned, I was in prison. But even with exposure to Islam and Christianity and different diverse conceptualizations of Islam, from the 5% nation of gods of earth, on down to Noble Drew Ali and Moorish science, from the Sunni Muslim to studying Shia Islam. Had they not sat me down for a minute, I'd have been through. So my stumbling block wound up becoming my stepping stone. So the incarceration, if anything, it liberated me. It made me slow down. I've always been hype. I've always been moving. Man, the best woman I ever met in my life, right there in that environment. The first time I even had any desire to write a book, right there in that environment. The first time without a gun, anything else, I had to stand up to people, especially being from Long Island, in that environment. Half of the guys that went through Rikers Island, Brooklyn House of D, all these other institutions where it was really, really rough. We was out in, guys that went with me, we were in like Riverhead County Jail, and it was soft in comparison to some of these crazy ass cats I met when I hit the actual prison system as opposed to the jail system, and it was no joke. And so consequently, I was far from being soft. My older brother Eddie, AKA Snooky, taught me how to fight, and my brother Jimmy from way back, so it wasn't even a knuckle game thing. I was always nice with my hands. But when I got nice with my mind, when I got nice with my brain, when I got nice in spirit, was from being stuck there in that place and being forced to do that. John the Divine, that wrote the book of Revelations, the last book in the Bible, he was in prison. Matter of fact, he wrote it while in prison on the Isle of Patmos. Everybody you can think of, from the Apostle Paul. I mean, they even locked Jesus up for a minute till they took him and killed him, got the death penalty. So what I'm saying is, don't get caught up in the incarceration part of it. It's not about incarceration, it's about elevation. It's about forgetting that this same thing that was supposed to be a stumbling block and a system, and where I was supposed to be stuck in there for the rest of my life. Because many a time I got ready literally to kill someone because I thought I was about to be killed. And it's a very, very dangerous environment. And you got a lot of urination contests and what's all these misconceptualizations of what manhood is. All this stuff in that environment. But that incarceration became my elevation, my emancipation, my liberation, and guess what? My spiritual elevation. Got it all from that environment, even my discipline. And so when I got back out here, that's what was up. So all I'm telling you right now is that's why that photo was up there, solely for the purpose of me reminding myself of where I came from, and the fact that I'm not ashamed of it. Glad that's the roughest university. You want to take a test? Forget over here at Howard where I'm at. You want to take a test? I'm gonna tell y'all some good stuff here. You go up in that piece, it'll blow your mind. And the only irony I'm gonna close out with right here is this. Every time I come over here, this thing reminds me, anybody that's ever been incarcerated in Clinton Correctional Facility, Attica, Sing Sing, Elmira, look at this. It looks just like a guard tower right over there. That's what it used to look like. Now this is on the Howard University School of Divinity grounds. But that big tall building right there, looks like a guard tower. Now all that is a music building and a school where they teach all kind of music over there on this property. But at the end of the day, every time I see that, it looks like Attica, Clinton, or Sing Sing. And I've been to a lot of other places since then, but that's not the point. What I'm saying is that all I'm telling y'all is, please don't knock the incarceration part. You'd be shocked. I've seen guys do stuff in that environment and come up with things that under any other circumstances, even the best of professors couldn't do nothing with it. You imagine getting a PhD in dealing with men. Here you are forced to get along with, if you're on a correctional facility, you might be in a gallery or a dorm setting where you're forced to get along with anywhere from as small as 7 to as much as 25 guys that are just as crazy, just as well seasoned, just as much gangster as you are. That's why